clica, our barrio, our families. That's all we got to say.
I'm really excited about today's show. I get the chance to interview someone from one of my favorite films of all time, top 5. I know every single word of this movie, not just the pop culture references. I literally know every single word of this movie from front to back. And today to share his experience on working on this particular film, as well as we're going to discuss his career. Ladies and gentlemen, the man who played a young JD in the movie American Me, I have actor Steve Wilcox. How are you, man?
Good. I'm very honored and flattered by the words that you said.
Looking good, man, even though you're a little bit grayer, looking like an older JD now, you know?
Yeah, I look like JD's grandfather.
Well, let's take it all the way back. Actually, let's talk about what you got going on right now. You're in Mexico, right?
Yes, I'm working on a series right now. I can only give so much information because I'm not allowed to disclose that much, but I can tell you that it's called it's a mini-series. It's a series by Amazon that will come out next year. It's called La Cabeza de Joaquín Murrieta, meaning the head of Joaquín Murrieta. And I play the character Harry Love. And that's as much as I'm allowed to disclose.
All good. Far. All good, man. Well, I definitely wish you the best out there. Whereabouts in Mexico are you, if you could share that?
Yeah, right now I'm in Durango.
Okay.
Most of my, about half of my shooting was in Mexico City, the outskirts of, and then now we're in Durango, the outskirts of as well, and hence the ridiculous beard.
Hey, it looks good on you, my man. Well, let's definitely go all the way back before you even got the acting bug. Where did you grow up?
I was born in Venezuela, and my father was Canadian. My mother's Venezuelan, so I'm a half-breed. So I grew up in Venezuela till I was about 18, went to L.A. to pursue my acting career, and there you have it. Okay. I've lived in L.A. ever since.
Okay, Venezuela. Let's talk a little bit about that. Up until 18. So I'm assuming you were interested in acting back then?
I got the bug when I was about 13 or 14. I was in high school still. Junior high. I took an acting class. I fell in love with the process. So I knew I was going to be an actor, but while I was down there, my family was not in the business, so I didn't really have any way of doing it. So besides taking acting classes in high school and doing a little bit of community theater, I didn't really do anything until I moved to LA.
Okay.
I studied acting in university, and then I got lucky enough that shortly after university, I only had to wait tables for about a year and a half. I booked the movie American Me, and then there you have it.
Okay. Now, did you ever get your hands on the script for Blood In, Blood Out?
That's funny you say that. Before American Me, an older Latino actor that I'd worked on a play with told me about it. All he said was like, "Hey, there's this movie out. I think it had a different name back then. There's a role that you're right for. Obviously, the role of Miklo. You should go in for it." I didn't really have a strong agent or anything, so I basically hand delivered my stuff back then, which was photo and resume. I think it was probably a VHS reel back in the day. And I dropped it off at casting, never heard from him. And then months later, I booked American Me. When I got comfortable enough when I became friendly with Edward James Olmos, I mentioned to him, "Hey, I was trying to get in on the role, the other movie, with the role of Miklo." And all he said was like, "Well, you're in the right movie now." That's it.
Love it. Man, history could have changed, huh? You could have been Miklo. That would have been very interesting. Very
exactly, yeah.
Well, what was going on in your life? I know you were waiting tables like every hardworking actor in Los Angeles is still doing to this day. But what was going on in your life, acting-wise, around the time you got picked up to be a young JD, or before American Me?
I was taking acting classes. While I was in college, I had booked a tiny little bit in some TV show called Roomies. I had, I did an industrial. I wasn't doing much, just hitting the pavement, as they say. Right before American Me, I booked an indie rom-com called Samantha, where I only worked for one day, and I had to join the union. So it actually cost me more to join the union than it did to act. So I was, I borrowed money from, I did whatever I could to pay the fees and the dues. And then right after, within a month, I got lucky enough to book American Me. So it ended up paying itself.
Yeah, man. What a career what a movie to get your career started. That's pretty dope. Now, being that you're from Venezuela, I'm going to assume that Spanish is your first language?
It is.
Okay, because looking at you, one would think it would be the opposite, right? English?
I've never heard that before.
Now, what were some of the things you did? Because you didn't grow up in the barrios of East LA and things like that. What were some of the things that you did to prepare for your role in American Me?
Basically, Edward James Olmos, when he hired me, he gave me a book called American Me, which was not about gangs at all. It was basically about the Chicano experience. It was like a book full of short stories about different ways of life being Chicano. And, I had been living in LA, but I didn't really know anything about the culture. I mean, I was Venezuelan, which is a Caribbean culture. I didn't really understand the accent. I didn't really know anything about it. And so basically I was thrown into the process, and the guy who helped me, besides Edward James Olmos, who guided me through everything, one of the actors, Pepe Serna, who played Mundo, was the guy who basically taught me the cadence of the Chicano accent. I think because one of my lines was born in Islos, and I said it wrong because I didn't understand it. So I said born in Islos, and he said like no. So he kind of walked me through the rhythm, and once he walked me through it, it was like once I knew it, I had it, and then everything fell in easy, especially being involved, working day in day out with all these people. I just kind of developed the accent, which felt to me, fortunately, it came very easy to me.
Yeah. Wow.
That's all I can say.
I mean, because watching the film, you would think that you grew up in East Los Angeles. So this just shows how good of an actor you definitely are. So I definitely got to commend you on that. That's a first that I'm hearing that.
Thank you.
Our clica, our barrio, our families, that's all we gotta say.
Just give me a little bit of peace, steady job and some food to eat. Just give me a little bit of peace, steady job and some food to eat. Just give me.
I do understand that a lot of the extras in the movie were people from the neighborhoods surrounding.
Yeah.
Do you have any stories about that? I know, unfortunately, there were some situations where a couple of them didn't make it. Yeah,
there were situations like that. In spite of the danger element, I always felt, maybe it's my naivete, but I always felt safe. Because when we worked in those neighborhoods, in those barrios, the locals, I think, were so honored to be included in this film that they took us in like family. Like I remember specifically, it may have been the first, I think it's a long time ago, but I think my first shoot day was that scene where I look out in the balcony to young Santana. And what they did is they borrowed somebody's house. So when I went in there, it was basically a family living in there. They had basically just moved their stuff out of the balcony, and I would come from the inside out. And in between takes, while I was waiting to shoot, they were like offering me, coffee. It was almost like for them, it was like I was visiting them, and I remember being really touched by that. And that's what I felt like in all of the neighborhoods we shot in. It was like everybody opened their doors to us. So I'm not going to say that there wasn't a danger element, because there was, but in my experience, it felt like I was welcome to a new neighborhood.
Wow. Now, you're new to LA at this time, you know, within a couple of years, just living here. Did you back then understand how big the gang issue was? Because in the early 90s, it was about as worse as it ever had been in LA.
Yeah, I mean, I'm embarrassed to say that no, I didn't, because the movie American Me was like a whole school for me. It was a whole learning procedure. I learned so much about the Chicano culture. I learned so much about the gang culture. Before that, I was just this half white boy coming into this situation and you know, riding the waves, just kind of rolling with the punches.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. What when it comes to improv and script and things like that, did Edward almost allow for a lot of improv on the set, or did you pretty much stick to the script?
We both. We stuck to the script, but he was also open to a lot of improvisation, in the sense that I remember the scene when we broke into that store
with the jukebox
and the jukebox and
yeah.
stuff. Yeah, I remember at one point Eddie just rolled the camera and said, like, okay, he kind of gave us situations, and then, you know, it may have not ended up in the movie, but it helped us along with the improvisational process, where, you know, I was asking for money from one of the guys, putting it in, and then in the final movie, it's not there, but it helped us develop our characters, basically. I'll tell you one story. In the script, in the original script, I was supposed to be the fastest of the three when we're running away, and there was even a line like, JD, how'd you get over the fence, or something like that. And I think my original line was like, you know, I did track in school essay. And when we actually shot the thing, the actors Panchito and Rick Coca were so fast that I was the slowest one, and I just couldn't keep up with them. And then on top of that, I got injured jumping over a fence. I landed on my foot so hard that I got a stone heel. They had to stop production. They had to ice my leg, and it was my first gig, so I felt so guilty. And I remember telling Eddie, like, I'm so sorry, and he was like, no, you're a godsend, because now it explains why you get shot. So basically, we changed everything around where I'm the slowest guy, which was the truth. And then I jumped over a fence, and when I landed on my foot, I actually added, like, you know, ay, cabrón, and I started limping, and so everything made sense. That's why I'm not fast enough, and I get shot by the store owner. So it was one of those happy accidents that, you know, I'm always grateful for.
Now, take us through what a typical day was like for you, specifically while you were filming on the set.
Wow, so long ago. I just remember, first of all, it was my first gig. So I was just one thing that I'll never forget was that, unlike other projects that you work on, where you're there, you're supposed to show up on your day, do your work, and leave for insurance reasons, for a million reasons, Eddie Olmos turned it into a family. So he basically welcomed me and anyone else to come visit the set anytime he wanted to, because it was very important for him that we feel that we're the characters by feeling comfortable. So basically, anytime I didn't have anything to do, I would show up wherever they were shooting, and I would just hang out. I would eat with them. I would, like, hang out with them, and some of those friendships are still strong to this day.
Love that. How long did it take for you to record all of your parts?
Wow, I can't remember. I think it was probably a month, 2 months, because there was breaks in between, because they shot the whole Folsom Prison scene, and then they would go back to us, because our major scenes were in LA streets, and then we had a whole juvie hall scene. So I think Folsom Prison was in between.
Oh, okay. Where was that juvie? Was that filmed in an actual juvie hall?
Yeah, the Juvie Hall scene was shot in Juvie Hall.
Do you remember which one? Probably not. You probably don't remember which one, huh?
I think it was on Mission Road or something.
Okay.
I can't remember now. It was like somewhere in East LA.
Mm-hmm.
The extras were all real. So one thing that I remember that was really fascinating was that the black kids stuck together, the brown kids stuck together, the white kids stuck together. There was no mixing in between. And I remember there was one Vietnamese kid, and I remember seeing him in the yard all alone because he didn't have his clique to hang out with. So, but basically, once you were in, all the whites were together, all the black kids were together, and all the brown kids were together.
Damn. What was the most challenging day for you on the set?
I don't know, but I remember one time when we were probably the chase sequence where the camera, it's an amazing camera shot where it's a crane shot following us from behind and then catching up to us and then following us from up front. And what happened was we were doing the scene where we were running, and I can't hear from my right ear, so sometimes I don't hear direction and stuff like that. And we were running, and the camera crew was following us on this like crane or whatever, and Eddie was sitting on it. And I remember that I thought we were done. I didn't know if I had a cut or anything. So I happened to look over at the camera thinking we were done. And I remember Eddie like, "Don't look at the camera." And I felt so, it was my first gig. I felt like I had like let them down and all that stuff. But it was, at the end of the day, it didn't mean anything. It was all in my head. But that was probably the most challenging for me because I wanted so much to impress, and I felt like I had let everybody down.
Now, when you first saw the movie, did you watch it in theaters? Did you watch it with the crew?
Oh, I think we watched it in the theater. Back then, there was a movie theater on Hollywood Boulevard called it was the Galaxy Cinemas, General Cinemas. I can't remember. They were there was a little small mall on Hollywood Boulevard by Orange.
Yep, I know exactly where you're talking.
And it's still there, but the theater is gone. But it was a major theater, and we were invited to it. Full house, popcorn, drinks, all that stuff, and it was a trip. But before that, I remember going with my wife at the time, going to see JFK in the theaters, and they showed the trailer of American Me, and it was pretty.
That's cool.
It was an amazing experience to like watch the audience was reacting to it, and I was in the trailer, and I was like, "Wow, this is pretty cool. I'm in a big movie."
That's so dope. That's dope. I love that shit. That's cool. When you first saw the movie, what were your general thoughts on it? Did you feel like, I could have did better? I mean, we're always critiques as people who do this.
As an actor, I always feel like I could have done better. Like, I don't like watching myself during playback. I don't know if every actor experiences this, but I always feel like, that thing. But besides that, it was an amazing experience. To this, I watched the movie not long ago in some screening or something. And, not all movies hold up. Movies get aged. And in my opinion, that movie has stood the test of time.
Oh, yeah.
And so back then to watch this, what I felt was a masterpiece, Eddie Olmos really did a masterpiece, was to this day, if I never work again, I can always look back and say, you know what? I worked on that.
Yeah. For forever and ever and ever, man. Even years when you're not here. Hopefully that's in a long time. But yeah, man, that's something to be proud of, man. That's really something to be proud of. And it just really trips me out. I'm still going back to the fact that you grew up in Venezuela up to you were 18, so you had no idea what this life was like. I would think that Eddie would pick someone, Edward would pick someone, who was part of the life, kind of knew the lingo already, not someone who quote taught. But that means he has that much faith in you.
Yeah, I'll tell you another amazing story is when I had the meeting, I wasn't cast yet, or like as far as I knew, the casting director called me and said, "This is an important film. Edward James Olmos is directing it. We're sending you the script. He wants to meet with you tomorrow morning. And that's all I knew. I was waiting tables. So I had a scooter. I rode my scooter to Universal Studios in my waiter uniform. I think I put the apron in the little glove compartment thing. I went into the trailer and Eddie Olmos was on the phone finishing a call. So he kind of like did that to me. And I was there, and then I'm kind of waiting, and he's kind of looking at me, kind of like smiling, kind of like checking me out. And then he hangs up, and he starts talking to me, and he's saying like, you know, you're a godsend. Like, you know, I didn't know you existed. And then I looked on the wall, and there was a picture of William Forsythe, a headshot, and my picture was next to him. And he's talking about the process, about they might have to shave my head. I have to I have to have a lot of discipline because we're going to be shooting in prison, blah, blah, blah. And then Forsythe walks in, who I was a big fan of from Raising Arizona. Mm-hmm. And, he kind of says like, Billy, Eddie loves to call everybody, my name's Steve. He calls me Stevie. He calls William Billy. So like, Billy, have you met Stevie? And then as we're talking, more people started walking into the room, like the casting director, the producers. And then he kind of forgot about me and started talking about what they were going to do that day. And I interrupted and I said, excuse me, did you just cast me or something? And he's like, yeah. And I had a reel in my briefcase. I'm like, don't you want to see my reel? And he laughed and said like, nah, I don't need to see a reel. I'll get you there. I directed all the kids on Stand and Deliver. I can get you there. And what's amazing about that is that this business makes you jump through so many hoops to do what you got to do. And people like Edward James Olmos come once in a lifetime and give you the benefit of the doubt because they know that you can do it. So I will always be grateful to that guy.
Our clica, our barrio, our families, that's all we got to say.
Just give me a little bit of peace, steady job and some food to eat. Just give me a little bit of peace, steady job and some food to eat. Just give me
I read Boxer Enrique's book about La M, and he mentioned they were upset at the movie. Did you have any knowledge of that?
Yes, absolutely. I don't know if I had knowledge at the time, but yes, the major thing was that the character that I play, Joe Morgan, who died in Pelican Bay, I think he died of cancer, he was upset. I know that some people were upset about the rape scene in Juvie Hall because they felt it was a sign of weakness. And I know, or I heard, that he was specifically upset because me and William Forsythe, more so me because I was younger, played the character with a limp. As an actor, I had to make it real where, like, if I just lost my leg, how can I not walk with a limp? But he felt that was a sign of weakness. And I know he was upset and he wanted to sue. So I know about the MA. I know that there was Eddie's name was on a piece of paper. I think him and his family moved to New York for a while. And I ran into William Forsythe at the gym a year later or something. And he went up to me and said like, hey, are you worried about them hating you? And I literally said like, William, they're going to get you first before they get me. So I'll worry about that if something happens to you. And that was that.
Okay. So I'm assuming you were never threatened or anything?
No, I was never threatened.
Now, doing a little research, I found out you were in Gang Related, Tupac's last movie. Oh, dude.
Yes.
I mean, one of the GOATs. I don't know if you can see behind me, but I got a poster of Pac right there. Rest in peace.
I love that.
Best.
I love that guy. I love that guy.
Talk to us about working in that movie. Did you get to work closely with him?
Absolutely. The first time I met him was at the reading of the script, and I didn't know who was cast and what. So I show up, and Tupac is there. And to be perfectly frank, I knew who he was because of all the controversy. But back then, I didn't know his music, so I wasn't a big fan yet. And we were both smokers back then. So we during a break, we went to the balcony, whatever, to smoke. And he I was a little, I knew who he was. So I was kind of like in awe. And he literally like, weren't you the guy in American Me? And I'm like, yeah. And he was like, that's my favorite movie. I was actually trying to reach out to you and the guy who played young Olmos, Panchito, about a project in mind. And I just remember being so odd that this is a star of a movie that I had a small part in, and he was giving me all the attention. And then at one point he said, I sampled you in one of my tracks. And he was going to give me the CD, Me Against the World. And then he got shot, and then he died a week later. And when I heard it, I was like stunned that he had actually sampled my voice.
Yeah, yeah. And I think was it the jail scene? I know there was a scene.
No, it was a moratorium scene where we're tattooing the new guy. And so basically, and then at the end of the song, he samples Robert De Niro and the Untouchables. Mm-hmm. So I can proudly say that I'm in a song with Tupac and De Niro.
I love that shit.
which doesn't happen every day. But he was a great guy. I loved him.
That's awesome.
He was such a cool guy.
How you feeling about the weed these days as I light up a joint? You still partake?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well,
not in Mexico.
I do edible.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, no, I think it's a beautiful thing.
I agree. How awesome is it? Because you're a little bit older than I am. I'm 43, and I remember when we had to meet up with the dude in a Ralph's parking lot to get a BS dime bag of weed that was half seeds with the stems and the sticks, and it tasted like crap. To now I could literally, there's 3 weed shops, maybe less than a mile. How did you feel? You kind of seeing that transition to where, oh my God, I'm going to go to jail if I have weed, to you could smoke in front of a cop now.
It's wild. We get because back in the day I did all that too. I remember being with my brother in Washington Square in New York. I was visiting him, and we bought weed from like some guy, and it turned out to be oregano.
Oh wow!
So we got taken for a ride. But no, now literally, I go to the dispensary. I buy. Like I said, I like edibles, so I buy edibles, and I eat them whenever I don't have to work. I eat them and I relax. My daughter is only 7, and literally she knows that that's dad's medicine, and she won't touch it. So we don't have to worry about that. I think it's great. I think of course it should be legal, and it is in most parts of the country, and it just shows you the silliness of the rules at play. Why shouldn't it be legal? And I think the fact that it's legal just makes it more acceptable, which it should be.
Yeah, I agree. Do you ever make it back to Venezuela?
The last time I was there was in 2014. I was there for a project, and I got to see my family down there, and things were getting heavy. That's when the Leopoldo Lopez, who was one of the opposition party leaders, got arrested by the dictatorship. And while I was down there, they locked down the streets. There was martial law. There was protesting. I partook in the protesting. My wife was less than 3 months pregnant with our daughter at the time. And she had told me, when you go to Venezuela, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. And I assured her I wouldn't, and I broke every rule. And she saw me on Facebook, like with flags and burning tires and stuff. But yeah, so that was the last time I was there. I haven't been back. My passport is expired. I'm in the process of trying to get it renewed. There's a thing in Venezuela that if you go in there you can enter with an expired passport, but if you were born in Venezuela, you can't leave with one. So it's very dangerous for me to travel down there because I can get caught. I can get stuck.
Yeah.
So it's a mess down there. It's a lesson to be learned is if you would have told me 25 years ago that this was going to happen in Venezuela, I would have laughed in your face. So it just goes to show you that, no empire is stable. Yeah, and anything can happen,
Yeah.
including the United States.
That's what I was saying.
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Sounds like we're not too far
Yeah.
off, sadly, but man, it's getting crazy out there, man. What's next for you after this situation you have in Mexico?
Well, I wrap up first week in November, and I go home, and all I know is that it looks like it's going to go for season 2, in which case I'll be back. But it's too soon to tell, but it's looking good. And that's it, man. I mean, I'm just happy to be working in Mexico on an amazing project, and I'm excited that it's probably going to go for season 2, and then wherever the road takes me.
Yeah, I love that, man. Well, let me ask you one last question. Is it harder to be an actor today in 2021, 2022, or was it harder back when you were coming up in the early 90s? Or is it easier? Which one would you say is easier?
I would have, without thinking it through, I would have to say easier, only because, well, for several factors. First of all, with all the streaming that's going on, there's much more work out there. The money might not be as great. Like, I think, I never worked on series, primetime series as a regular.
Mm-hmm.
So actors who worked on primetime series complain about the amount of money they made then and the amount of money you make if you're working on an Amazon show or a Netflix show. Mm-hmm. Since I never had to deal with that, I'm excited about the fact that there's so much more opportunity right now.
Yeah,
also, during the lockdown, because everybody was stuck in their homes watching Netflix and Amazon, I think the American audience is more open to subtitles. In other words, they're more willing to see foreign films than before. So people will watch more stuff. Mm-hmm. Also, so there's much more opportunity. In my case, for some reason, at my age, even though I worked on an amazing project like an American Me, and I worked since then, there was also periods of dry spells where, I'm kind of a tweener. I'm not good enough. I'm not as good looking as Brad Pitt. I'm not as funny looking as Stephen Buscemi. Mm-hmm. So I was somewhere in the middle, and it was just kind of hard to find my niche. But with my age now, it seems to be kicking in. So I'm happy about that. That being said, there's so much on streaming right now that it's not like in the old days where if you were in a show, everybody saw it because there's not much to watch. Now there's shows right now where people will tell me like, hey, have you seen so-and-so on Amazon or Netflix? And I've never heard of it. Mm-hmm. So there's an audience, but you can be in a hit. Well, you can be in a big series on one of those streamers, and a lot of people don't even know it exists because there's so much out there. Mm-hmm. But for me, it's not about stardom. It's about work and about being able to do what I love to do until I can't do it no more.
Yeah. Do you still keep in touch with Edward?
I do. I do. We keep in touch. I'm very good friends with his sons. So I stay in touch with them. And I have this thing that I do with Eddie where it's my craziness. I love connecting the dots. So whenever I book something, I look to see how I got it. And more times than not, it goes back to American Me. So whenever it goes back to American Me, I will send him a text saying, what happened. And he's always graciously going back like, you deserve it. Like he's really cool about that. But, I keep saying that one of these days he's going to block me because I keep thanking him for stuff that he's like, stop bugging, I become the stalker.
That's a good thing, my man. Well, hey, dude, it's been a pleasure. I want to thank you once again for taking time out of your schedule to make this happen. It's been a pleasure of mine. Man. I want to thank you for just being part of one of my favorite movies. I'm going to go watch it now just to watch it, even though I've literally seen it probably 128 times. 129 won't hurt, man. Steve Wilcox, thank you so much, man. I will definitely be in touch, okay?
Thank you.
Peace, man. Later.
Take care.